All right, good day, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So today, we're getting out another healthy podcast for you. So real quick before I dive into our latest guest co-host, I want to remind you guys, get those reviews coming in. I'm going to be starting to share a lot more of them on our fun little podcasts, so that way you get your name and your feedback out there. And let's be real, 2.5 years now, I think we should have more. So I've got my little soapbox statement out of the way. So without further ado, I've got a healthy influencer coming on today for you. She actually founded the brand Body and Soul Alchemy. It's a belief that everyone deserves to live a healthy, vital life, no matter what experiences or illnesses they have had in the past. And you know how much we geek out about healthy lifestyle on this show. But she's also a multi author, and also has the brand, the Superfood Alchemy Cookbook. She's got a community. She's been around the block. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jennifer Iserloh.
Oh, it's so great to be here, Scott. Pleasure.
So we're having some fun already because we're obviously on video, we're on audio, and what some people want to do on on a Monday at 5 p.m. is usually stop working. But clearly, you and I don't understand that. We're going to have some fun and work and have some podcasting. So how's your day been?
It's been great. I've been working on some recipes, doing some meditation. I'm drinking an adaptogenic herbal tea right now to keep myself revved up, because after we get off, I have some more work to do. So, as a busy entrepreneur, it's all about how are you going to get all those things in, because we don't have 9-to-5 jobs. So
what? It's not a 9-to-5 job? Wait a minute, you can't write 24 books, I believe it is, in a 9-to-5 job? What are you talking about, Jennifer?
Yeah, usually it's 3 weeks to 2 months per book. But yeah, when you're...
Whoa. Let's pause. 3 weeks?
Yeah, I've written a book in 3 weeks once. Yeah.
Okay. Color me impressed. So.
Yeah.
And let's be real here. For people who have never heard of you or already know you, maybe remind them about you. You've done other things. I mean, you're a trained chef. You're a graduate of the Institute of Culinary Education. You actually teach and work with other professionals. Let's dig into some of that. I mean, what's it like working with other professionals that are impacting our health and our well-being?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about this really special, almost magical coaching work that I do. So, I've had a long path to healing. My entire family's morbidly obese. Most of them have passed from diabetes, heart attack, you name it. I had atrocious gut issues. I myself was on the borderline obese. I was almost type 2 diabetic. And, along my own health journey, I really healed myself through food and meditation. So it's always been about that mind-body connection. I just didn't know that, I was in that world because I was doing yoga separately. I was cooking. And then at the age of 30, I decided to follow my dream to become a chef. And a lot of crazy stuff happened. I worked in New York City kitchens. I worked for celebs. And then I really got delved into the world of looking at food from a medicinal standpoint. So not just your everyday healthy stuff like spinach and kale, but going a little deeper and understanding how foods impact condition-specific illnesses like thyroid, obesity, IBS, Crohn's, all this, these horrible lifelong illnesses that people are suffering from.
Even skin conditions, right? Like psoriasis.
Yeah, psoriasis, the gamut. And I started working for a nutritionist who's on the Today Show, and I worked on her books and really got interested in this. So I started writing for integrated and functional medicine practitioners, and some of them are chiropractors, some are naturopathic doctors, some of them are Chinese medicine doctors, and some of them are MDs as well. And this whole world opened up to me of, how can you mix and blend? So that's where this idea of alchemy, where you see alchemy in my practice. So now I'm a coach for doctors, which if you would have told me 20 years ago, borderline obese, I had all these health issues, that no, you're going to become a coach for doctors, my head would have exploded. But I work on mindset with doctors, and these are special doctors that are also entrepreneurs. So they're running their own practices. They're very active giving talks. They have platforms on Facebook. They're cash-based businesses too, because a lot of them don't take insurance. So, but they're the ones I feel that are at the cutting edge. They're biohacking medicine.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are doing really amazing things. They're healing hundreds of thousands of people. So, what I came to realize is that if I coach these practitioners and I work with them and write cookbooks for them, that is the greatest service I can bring, because they're doing wonderful things. And a lot of my practitioners, some of them are OBGYNs, some of them work with autoimmune, some of them work with chronic pain, especially the chiros that I work with. So those are the circles that I travel in, and I learn so much more. I continue my education by working with these people, and it's a pleasure to create food programs for them, videos, coach them. I actually do media training with them to teach them not to be afraid on camera, because most doctors, you stick a camera on them and they're like, ah. So it's
Some
been
people are
just,
not used to the face-to-face. So
yeah, it's just
digitally face-to-face.
right. And it's just been like an incredible journey and an honor for me to work in this field and work with these, special people that I feel are visionaries. I mean, this is what's going to happen, at least I hope, in the future of medicine.
Well, I love it because you and I chatted briefly before the show that we don't really have a script for this show. I love to see it flow naturally. That's why you're a guest co-host and you're not following some kind of strict, bubbled, interview process, because I love to see, I've 2.5 years now. I love to see what just pops up and we go different wavelengths. And I love the fact that you and I started talking about how it's exciting to see that the fact you are working with MDs. But then there's newer buzzwords out there, even though it's not really new, but okay, functional medicine, holistic medicine. There's basically a tiered process. And a lot of people don't know how to bridge the gap, right?
Yeah.
So if we have to start high level, like how do you explain to people the differences between MD, functional medicine versus holistic medicine?
Sure. So I think what most people are used to is going to a regular healthcare provider who's a regular doctor, MD, that you use health insurance for. And a lot of them are great. Some of them do integrate certain practices like food or herbs, but a lot of them are people that are prescribing meds because it's the law. So a lot of people don't realize this, that if they take insurance and you have an ailment, by law, they must prescribe. So part of that is just the onus on them that they have to offer you a prescription and you can decide whether you want to take it. Now, integrated doctors, some of them still take health insurance. So by law, they still have to write, the script. But they're doing more things like trying to get you into yoga, or maybe they're teaching you mindfulness or meditation, and they're touching more on food, but they're still in the kind of the old-fashioned healthcare system that we've set up. And then we've got functional. So functional medicine practitioners are all about root cause resolution. So when you get a pill for something, it's just dealing with symptoms, but you don't deal with what's causing the headache. You're just dealing with the pain of the headache, or you're not dealing with what's causing you to have that gut rot every day. Is it that you have some parasite in there? Regular doctor will just give you medicine to usually deal with the symptoms, where functional medicine will take a battery of tests and get to the root cause. Now, since a functional medicine practitioner typically does not want to take insurance because they don't believe in necessarily prescribing meds for chronic illness. They do believe in emergency care and medication when you need it, but not for chronic illness. The way you heal chronic illness is through lifestyle. So I work with integrated and functional medicine practitioners. Some of them are also MDs, and some of them are more on the holistic end. So holistic is Chinese medicine, which is an ancient system that basically follows the functional medicine practitioners of food, lifestyle, herbs, mindset. Same with Ayurvedic doctors, and then also people that are called naturopathic doctors that follow a similar paths. So they're less likely to prescribe allopathic meds, but the only case they really might is if you have like a really rotten parasite and there's no other way to get rid of it except for antibiotics, some kind of extreme, or they would send you to emergency care should you need it. So to me, this kind of doctor that's really looking at lifestyle to correct the root cause of the illness and not just address the symptoms, they're kind of like detectives. So they might do a gut test. They might check to see how well your metabolism. They're going to see if you have mercury. So they might do a battery of 3 or 4 tests. And I had mine done and it was eye-opening. I had like a thing from chicken in my stomach from when I was a chef that was causing me to be exhausted. It was called Campylobacter. So they do something called a GI map to see what kind of bugs are squiggling around in your gut. And I got my metabolism tested and everything else.
Yeah,
I got my
there's good bugs and
epigenetics.
bad bugs, right?
Yes. And that's part of something called the microbiome. So a lot of these doctors follow what's going on with your gut bugs. If you have an imbalanced gut, you're going to have too many bad ones. And that could be causing Crohn's, that could be causing psoriasis, that could be causing headaches or even depression.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to a regular doctor, they might just give you a drug to deal with the depression without looking at what's going on inside.
I call that the pharmaceutical Band-Aid is my little term I use for that, because they didn't take the time, because let's be real, and I have friends that are MDs and they've admitted to this on past shows. They said, listen, we were never trained in nutrition or healthy lifestyle. You're trained on identifying the symptom or the issue, and then obviously treating the symptom, but not the actual root cause. I think many MDs at the root probably wanted to eventually get to that level, and they just, unfortunately, due to the systems and the protocols, never got that far, and they fell into that.
Yeah, and you have to be sympathetic to that, because medical school is a hell of a lot to get through. But you can think of a regular doctor as more of like dealing with emergency care and mechanical things. And then I feel like everyone should have two doctors, integrated and regular Western MD. So and that's what I have. And, I just pay out of pocket for the integrated one. I don't care. And, sometimes the gut tests, those tests weren't expensive. I spent maybe $600 and to find out that I actually had gluten sensitivity, where I went to my regular doctor, their test does not reveal, because that's not the correct test, was huge for me. Because once I got off gluten, I basically turned back the clock on my skin 5 years. My muffin top went away. I thought, oh my gosh, am I gaining all this weight because I'm in my 40s now, or what the heck's going on?
I take it to the full level that, this is me, and I've tested this on a lot of people too, that grain just does not belong in the body. There's no nutritional value to it. And I keep finding study after study after study, and result, including my own self. Like, I stopped drinking beer 2 years ago. But a lot of people don't know that, beer derived from grain, even alcohols like bourbons and whiskeys and stuff are derived from grain, but due to like the distillation process, it removes those impurities. There's no chance of things like gluten, for example, to even survive in that environment. Right. Granted, it's still an alcohol, still a toxin, right? So, you have to look at that. That's not toxicity.
Yeah, it can be used medicinally, but when used too much of a medicinal food, it can become a poison too. Mm-hmm. So that's what I tell people. And in terms of grains, I run nutritionals all the time, because I've worked for Atkins, I've done ketogenic diets, I've done every diet under the sun, and I want to know what's in the recipe that I'm creating. So when I run nutritionals, nuts and seeds have more nutrition than grains.
Yes.
Less calories, less carbs. You don't have to eat as much of them to get the manganese and magnesium and all those vital nutrients that people claim. Well, it's true. They are in grains, but you have to eat an awful lot. The other thing people don't know about grains, and you can enjoy them as long as you're going organic, but a lot of our grains are not the ancient grains that people in the farming culture used to eat. The other thing is, people like hundreds of years ago used to move their bodies, and we're not doing that anymore. So we don't need all these carb-heavy foods all the time.
Well, and also we were hunter-gatherers, not gatherer-hunters, right? So that changed, over the years. So
yeah, so there's a lot of factors to consider if you are considering keeping grains in your diet, but it's not something that I typically recommend.
Well, and the other thing is, even if I agree with the gluten concern, but I'm actually really excited to see the science progress, and eventually we can take a position. I'm excited to see this happen. I don't know if you've actually really dug into this deep, but I truly believe, because I was a farm kid, that I know when I was a kid, we didn't do a lot of the stuff that we do today to our soils and the crops and everything else. So I believe that, without having your experience, that it's interesting if we dug deeper, is it just the gluten, or is it what we put on those plants, which has survived the process?
Yeah,
right?
Let's talk a little bit about what the deal is with gluten. No, it isn't a myth. More and more people are having issue with it. And there's two reasons why. Well, probably three. So the first reason that almost everyone may have issue with gluten is because gluten is found as a protein. It's a combination of two proteins found in wheat, rye, and barley. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those crops are sprayed with an extremely dangerous pesticide called Roundup that has glyphosate in it, which tears your intestinal lining to shreds. So this is why you have things like leaky gut when stuff gets on outside the intestinal lining, because your intestines aren't that thick and it causes like a fungal infection. Mm-hmm. And this causes brain fog and bloating and all kinds of issues. The other issue is that wheat specifically in this country is farmed to have 100 times more gluten. And gluten is a very sticky substance. That's what gives bread its kind of chewy bounce,
Mm-hmm.
which is good in a way, but bad for our intestines to try to digest because it's like glue for us.
Well, and it wasn't always that way. We modified the crop. Back to your
Big
point,
time.
connection on ancient, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
So it's 100 times removed from the traditional grain that we used to grow in this country.
Yeah.
And that happened in the span of maybe 30 years. So this is why you're like, oh, my parents never had this. Well, they weren't eating the wheat that we're eating. And then the third thing is you have something called autoimmune deficiency, where your body gets so inflamed and so stressed out that it starts to attack itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I have something called gluten sensitivity, where it's just like an allergy and I get bloat or an allergic reaction. But if you have gluten sensitivity and you keep eating it, you can throw yourself into celiac, which is an autoimmune version of not being able to have gluten and have your own antibodies actually attack the lining of your stomach and tear it to shreds, just like the glyphosate. And why this is an issue is because there's these little hairs inside your intestine that pick up all the nutrients, and those hairs are called villi, and they just get blown away. So this is why people who have undiagnosed celiac disease have low iron, low vitamin A, and they can't figure out what the heck's going on. But the problem is with Western medicine is because the cheaper test that's covered by your regular doctor isn't enough to find out if you have an intolerance. It only charts one of the proteins, and there's hundreds of mini proteins inside gluten. So you have to go to an integrated or functional medicine. I call it the GI map. I know there's other terminology for it, but that's the one that I took to really find out if you suspect you have this. You need to be on top of it. Now, my husband doesn't have it, and I don't want to deprive him of his blessed bread. He grew up in Germany and he still drinks beer, but you have to go organic.
But go to Germany and enjoy it, and then come back.
I wish, yeah.
Right? It's
wish,
like,
but no, but I still let him have it, but we do all organic because organic wheat is not allowed to be sprayed with Roundup or glyphosates.
Yeah.
So,
but you made a valid point earlier, right? If you had a choice, are you taking the nutrient density approach? And that's like, again, seeds, nuts, like a macadamia nut could crush a grain when it comes to the
could crush a fourth cup of grain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's like the 1-to-1.
That was a great ratio connection. I love that.
Yeah, because I run nutritionals all day. Like I know. So.
Real quick, let's define that. You said that earlier. Nutritionals, is that just a generalized statement for basically the testing that you're evaluating, or when you say nutritionals?
So what I do is when I work for companies and I work for doctors, I create a recipe in my mind, and then I have a program that PhDs in nutrition use to actually input the foods. So I can see the macronutrients, which are fat, fiber, and protein, and the micronutrients, which are all the like B vitamins, D, iron, all that good stuff. But I know exactly what's in food. So when people will say silly things to me like, this is low carb, I'm like, no, it isn't. Or this is keto. I'm like, no, it has way too many carbs and not enough fat. So I actually see the physical numbers. So I know the direct percentages of how much vitamin D is in something, or magnesium, or beta carotene, which turns to vitamin A in our bodies. So when somebody makes a blanketed statement, like a lot of people think broccoli rabe is a superfood, and it is not. It has maybe 1/10 of the nutrition of grain.
It's tasty.
Kale.
I like it.
I love it, and nothing against it. You can have it, but if you want to choose between spinach and kale, you're going to go those routes. Broccoli rabe has almost nothing in it, so you can't just think because a grain. Listen to me, a food or a vegetable is bitter or tastes like this, it has this nutrition. That's not true. And I mean, you can Google these things, but every data bank, like the one I use is USDA approved, is what PhDs in nutrition use. So, when I'm looking at nutritional profiles, I really look at the benefits versus, the things like, if I'm looking at something like a grain, you have to eat a whole cup of grains to get the same thing and a handful of nuts. And the other thing is a lot of our nuts haven't, I think, been contaminated in the way that grains have been.
Oh, not the nut that I enjoy. I don't know. You ever heard of the pili nut?
Yes.
Had the founder of Eat Pili Nuts on the show over a year ago, and I became obsessed because, again, to your point, the manganese, the magnesium richness of that, it's off the charts because they're grown in volcanic jungle soils in hundreds of years old trees in the Philippines. That nut is amazing.
Yeah, and the problem is our soil is so stripped of magnesium, and what people don't understand, this is why all the hubbub about magnesium you might see in different health circles, our food doesn't really have a lot of
Not
magnesium.
anymore. We've pardon the term,
So,
raped our soils. I mean, just
yeah,
destroyed the
so it's really
potential.
important, and seeds and nuts have very high quantities of that nutrient. And I also do supplementation for
Mhm.
myself. And once I started supplementing, my stress levels went from up here to down there. So it's really important.
Magnesium supplement right here.
Yeah, that's a nutrient that rules the health of your immune system and how calm you are and how your brain functions. And people that are depressed are extremely low in magnesium. So people think depression's like, oh, because you had a rough childhood. A lot of it's dietary.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you that your stress levels drop. You're again not being. I studied psychology when I was in the university. I don't have a PhD in it or anything, but it's just that's why I geek out about mindset, brain health, everything we've already talked about already. You're talking about gut health, totally tied to your brain health. Okay, they are communicating each other 24/7. So if one is on the down low, it's going to affect the other. You actually said it earlier in the show, brain fog. Okay. All right. What are you putting in your body? How are you fueling it? What's happening there? You just said about magnesium. I learned from, you familiar with Jack Cruz, the neurosurgeon?
No, but that
Oh,
sounds
God.
like someone I would like.
Oh, yeah. His is the, to this date, nobody has beaten his downloads or his 60,000 watches on just one of the YouTube videos that I aired from the podcast. God, I just re-aired his show to episode 255 last
Okay,
week.
I'm going to go back and listen to it because I'm fascinated with
Now,
brain health.
don't judge the podcast quality because it was 2 years ago.
No judgments.
The
No
production has improved a little bit, the webcams and everything too. But Jack, just somebody at your level would just love it because I actually joked around later after that episode. I remember I was like, hey, Jack, we got to work on you just, I don't want to say the terms dumbing it down, but just making the knowledge more approachable. Because I think a lot of people are afraid to do the self-study or take the responsibility for their own health, become their own inner physician. A colleague of mine uses all the time. I love that statement. Become your own inner physician. And some people are afraid when they meet somebody like Jack or they watch one of his videos or hear a podcast of him on, it's like, oh my God, that guy is off the charts intelligent. But one of
Yeah.
the biggest things he taught me 2 years ago was one, I'm wearing blue blockers today. Two, water, light, magnetism, three core principles of the body. He's like, you can geek out about nutrition all you want, but he's like, at the cellular level, he said, magnesium is an essential fuel, for example, for the power plants of your cells, which is your mitochondrial health. And I was like, just blew my mind. So I love
Yeah.
mitochondria. I love talking about that.
Yeah, and it's, you find these like really special gurus. And, when you were saying about the inner doctor, like I was thinking of one of my gurus, Sachin Patel from Living Proof Institute. And he's so brilliant. He's like, you are the doctor of the future. And he says it over and over and over again. And, he's totally into this like hardcore geek out stuff, but he's really into mindset and also that you have to have some kind of emotional or spiritual practice, which I think is very important too.
Well, I like you just hit on there. Is that part of the reason why? Because two of the core brands, I'm going to do some screen sharing. Actually, we've been slacking here. You got two core sites, right? You got Body and Soul Alchemy, your coaching, and you have the Superfood Alchemy. So just real quick, because I'm a marketing guy, the keyword of alchemy here, you've carried it across your brands. Is that part of this? You talk about the whole blending,
Yeah, that's what, alchemy, like I started studying ancient alchemy about 5 years ago because I plateaued out in my yoga
Awesome.
practice, and I've been a yogi for almost 20 years now. So alchemy kind of teaches you how to blend things in a way to make them more powerful.
Okay.
I think that's very attractive to people who are in high performance, biohacking, these doctors I work with. So the book website, Superfood Alchemy, teaches you how to dovetail things like adaptogenic foods with plant-based recipes and crystals and essential oil for beauty care and meditation. But the way the book is set up is you cook your way through these really important energy systems, which also have all the super important glands, like the pituitary gland, your thyroid, your thymus gland, your microbiome. I talk about the microbiome in that, but I also talk about you digesting some of the upsetting emotional things that have happened to your life. Because what I find is that healing has to take place on many levels. So in this book, I teach you how to heal on all three levels. You heal on the body, the emotions, and the mind. And it's all about how do you dovetail them together to make it simple, because we are all super busy. So it's how do you bring these practices together? And that's the alchemy piece, is that in alchemy, what you learn is 1 + 1 can equal 4. Or in this case, there are three practices. 1 + 1 + 1 equals 10,000. So if you're healing your gut and you're using the adaptogenic foods for your gut, take a minute to think about, was there a time where you didn't trust your gut instinct?
Yeah.
So that's what I teach in the book. So on my coaching platform, which is Body Soul Alchemy, where I coach a lot of practitioners and entrepreneurs, it's really just about teaching them first to deal with emotional health. That's a huge one. And then we dovetail those other two pieces together. And a lot of my practitioners and people I work with have the foods somewhat tapped down. Maybe we need to sprinkle some herbalism or adaptogenic foods, but a lot of them are lacking in meditation and mindset. And a lot of them have emotional trauma because they've healed themselves of a lot through their lives, but they're still holding on to a little piece of that trauma. So that's where I work, privately with a lot of
I think we're all
clients.
guilty of that, aren't we?
Of course. And, healing is like an onion. It has layers.
Yeah.
And you continue to heal and digest things as you mature spiritually, intellectually, as an entrepreneur. I mean, being an entrepreneur is so damn hard. I've been in this world for 15 years and, it's a rough road, but it's also a developmental experience, and you learn how to spend your time and who to connect with and what mistakes you've made, where to invest your money. And this is also just about understanding how these energy system works, following your gut instinct, listening to your heart, not teaming up with someone that doesn't make you feel good in business. So, the book is just...
How often does that happen?
Oh, goodness. I've been through that. But, the book is just really explaining to you how those mechanisms fit together, because I think that's really what holistic health is about. It's not just about doing separate things. It's about understanding the energy centers and treating them with the full care, the holistic care.
I love that because, again, you and I joked around about that real quick before we started the show that, I've chosen 3 key words for my format, right? We fuel your health, your business, your lifestyle, because I have found over the years that everybody that I've ever talked to seems to struggle with that. Okay. Healthy lifestyle, very common together. Take care of your health. You have a better lifestyle. You just hinted at entrepreneurship, right? The business component. People so often sacrifice their health and their lifestyle to achieve a certain career success or entrepreneurial success or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, but then you could have millions of dollars. And I forget who gave me this this scenario years ago, but I will never forget it. He said, listen, you're a billionaire one day and you're unfortunately hospitalized and you can't leave your bed. He's like, so what are your billions worth now? Right? Because you sacrificed so much along that path. All you achieved was a monetary value. What happens to your spirituality, your mental state, that everything you need to have balanced. So it's very interesting perspective, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah, and the one thing I do when I work with coach people and work with practitioners, I usually find that one sore spot. Because when I said I work with emotions first, I figure out where the biggest drain is and I plug that up. So that's the thing. And sometimes if you just deal with the 1 or 2 things, and if you're a millionaire hustler, well, it's not even millionaire anymore. It's like whatever, billionaire hustler shaker. And you've got one thing where you never, you had this fight with your dad and you never rectified that. And that's affecting your physical health, your paradigm for making money, your sense of security, so many things. So in my coaching practice, I go for the emotions first. The book is more of a manual for attacking that specific area. So that would be your heart chakra or your heart engine. And, I work with people to understand where that biggest energy suck is. Now, it's hard when you're an entrepreneur because sometimes you have 1 or 2 or 3, but sometimes if you could just tweak the food or just tweak the mindset, it's enough to give you enough energy. And then you also start to think, what can I let go of? What are the activities I'm doing that aren't serving me, that aren't making money, that aren't serving my business? It is tough though, because as entrepreneurs, we have to worry about social media. I mean, sometimes just doing promo for yourself is a full-time job.
Your point on that, though, I've coached on this. I've even had to have this. My fiance, she's an entrepreneur. She's a equine horse vet doctor, and doctor of chiropractic. So she's very into the wellness side of things. And I'm excited to help her grow that side because I noticed that she's more passionate there. She obviously was core trained in medicine, but thanks to the additional education in chiropractic, she's taken it to a different level, and she doesn't enjoy the medicine side of it as much anymore. She enjoys the healing side of it. So it's just like we're talking about here, obviously with animals. I'm
very familiar with equine therapy. I have a couple friends who do it, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, she was just over in New Jersey because we live right here in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I think you're a Jersey girl, right?
I'm in Hoboken, yeah, but I'm from Pittsburgh originally. So
I've been in Hoboken many times.
Okay.
But she was just over at some conference in New Jersey, and and she loves stumbling across other doctors who have started stumbling across chiropractic education like she has. Or a year and a half ago, we went down to South Africa to a conference, and one of the pieces of equipment they trained us on was shock therapy, but it wasn't like I'm not shocking you, but it's called shock wave. So it's like taking sound waves at a much different frequency and literally healing the tissue without preventing surgery, preventing the ability of having to actually send that horse or animal off for actual cutting. And she was so excited by that. She added that to the practice, because if she could prevent an animal from being cut open, that's a big step in the right direction. So she was willing to research that further. So we had a lot of fun with that. But it's funny how that transcends from the human world into the animal world too. There's all these people like her or human doctors who want to heal, want to help people or animals get better. And pharmaceuticals aren't always the answer. I earlier in the show you said this,
and it's about finding, like alchemy. It's about finding the right blend for the best healing that's the least invasive and hurt. You really want to respect the whole organism. So that's why I always, when someone comes to me and they have a lot of stomach issues, I know that they're probably people who do not follow their gut instinct, and that they have something at home that's turning their stomach literally, emotionally. Or they don't have a sense of power. They're with a partner who's just steamrolling over them all the time. There always is some kind of correlation like that. Sure, there's mechanical things. Sure, there might be a food sensitivity or allergy. Yeah, there might be a parasite or something going on with unbalanced microbiome gut bacteria, but there is a strange, interesting correlation between the two. And it's true with our relationship with animals, is that animals can help heal us too. I mean, they always talk, I have 2 little French bulldogs, and anytime I'm feeling stressed, I take a break, pick them up, pet them. I mean, I do, I'm very fortunate to be able to work at home to do that. But, we're part of our environment. And this is also why we can look to animals to heal us emotionally and plants to heal us physically.
I love the dog connection, because you might have barely overheard Calvin earlier. We have Calvin the coonhound in the next room, and he likes to bellow from time to time. I think he just waits till I'm on the show. But this microphone is so good, it never shows up on the show, so I'm all right with it. But sometimes you might hear it. Anyway, dogs especially are definitely healers. Even though he's standoffish and he likes to be his own man. I recently, well, actually before me, back at Thanksgiving, we found that he started limping, and he's 10 years old. And one day he just stopped using the leg. He was yelping, and she spent a lot of money getting orthopedic analysis is done and everything else. And we found that he got cancer. So cancer was eating away at the cartilage in his elbow, and it was gone. So he was too painful to use it. And we had a decision. We're like, wait a minute, we're both like crazy adrenaline junkie lifestyles. We want to travel, and we love our dog. It was actually her dog before it was my dog. So we became my dog through the relationship. And we said, you know what? He's 10. He's still spunky. Let's go for it. So we turned him into a tripod. He no longer has that front leg. And now he's just as crazy as he's ever been. He beat cancer. No chemo was needed.
Because animals just release it. They haven't experienced, they're not like us thinking back to when. But, if you do an animal wrong, they'll remember. Yeah. But animals have this very elastic emotion, that one minute my 2 Frenchies are fighting over a toy and they're biting the heck out of each other, and next minute they're kissing and snuggling in bed. So it's, we need to learn to be more like that. But they're just really good for calming your nervous system, anytime you have stress. And, just to have that love and that energy around you is so important. And it's important in your relationships too. And a lot of times the emotional work I do is about this energy center where the thyroid is, about communication. And that's how you're able to heal a lot of those emotional issues that cause stress hormones to greatly impact the body. So there is a direct link. It's not just woo, even though I love the woo, I'll tell you right up front. But
that is one of my top 5 strengths from Strengths Finder 2.0, the book. So actually, that's my number 1 strength.
Oh, that's my husband's too. Woo.
Is he in sales and marketing? Or
yes, he is actually.
Gee, I wonder why.
Marketing and websites for integrated and functional medicine practitioners. We work with all the same people.
There we go.
We're very aligned on that. But yeah, woo is a big one for him. And now, mine is.
Do you have woo at all? And you have
No, I don't
empathy.
have woo. I have empathy is my number one,
See, that's a
unfortunately.
powerful strength. That's a very
Ugh,
powerful strength.
it's a lot of work because people cry on my shoulder, but I get to
That's
hear all the
draining.
juice.
Yeah, that's see, back to the energy alignment. And this kind of connects
Yeah.
on Calvin too. It's like, so I was actually in the hospital recently. I've never been hospitalized, and I accidentally collapsed a lung. So
You accidentally collapsed a lung. What were you doing? Were you skydiving?
no, and I love skydiving. I skydived over New Jersey. Actually, I've skydived around the country, and no, not doing any of my crazy stuff. It was just like I'm wearing a CrossFit shirt right now. It was over the holidays, and I just displaced a rib, just moved a little bit in cartilage alignment in my back, enough to affect my breathing. And I did it years ago when I was serving as a hotshot, as a firefighter out west. So I knew exactly what the injury was. I felt I had memory, like, oh, I know what this is. But my chiropractor, I don't go to MDs. I have chiropractors and everything else. So you and I are on alignment there. And I knew that only she could fix it. But I had to wait a couple of days until she was back in because she left for the holiday. And I'm not going to go to somebody I don't use. So I just gave it a couple of days. I started chugging bone broth and my anti-inflammatory processes. I'd been putting off trying igloo cryotherapy. So like, you know what the heck, let's go try that out. So I did some, cold thermogenesis type stuff. I went for deep tissue massage to help loosen that area up. And then boom, went to the chiropractor. She put it right back where it belongs. Everything felt great. What I didn't know those few days was I'm 6'4". Yeah, I'm standing at my desk right now. So I didn't realize that apparently if you're a tall, lean athlete, and if you're sent into fits of convulsive coughing, like your diaphragm's just slamming your lungs, you could pop an alveoli. And if you pop an alveoli, that air is released, sent to the surface of the lung, and creates a blister. The blister is called a bleb. If the bleb pops, you release your own air into your chest cavity where your lung needs to be. So you actually self-collapse your lung. Had no idea. I thought I was just getting a chest cold. And then I had it that way for 3 weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry. Someone's trying to call me. Let me get rid of this.
You are popular. That's okay.
I know. Oh, this is so annoying.
I don't judge.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
So, that's okay.
I got to unhook my phone from the my computer.
Oh, yeah. See, that happened to me during a podcast about a year ago, and it drove me crazy. And I had to figure out how to deactivate it because I have used Google Voice, and if you happen to have that browser open, then Google lights up, and it's crazy. So it's okay.
You know what? I'm going to put Do Not Disturb on my phone. That'll fix that. Anyway, sorry about that. So my husband's very tall like that. He's 6'5".
And is he lean, though?
He's, he's extremely lean. He's like a 33 waist and maybe 170 pounds.
How much?
175.
Wow, he's leaner than me. Okay.
Oh, we call him Stick Boy, but he started kickboxing with me. So I'm glad that you're telling me this so I can kind of, watch him and
I did a whole episode on this. Actually, my anniversary episode of 250, I told everybody about what went down. I was doing Facebook Lives from the hospital because I believe in sharing all this stuff because everybody thinks I'm the crazy, bulletproof, adrenaline junkie, health and fitness nut. I've been told by friends of mine. And I said, well, thank you, but I'm still human. And I can injure myself. And I thought I was being self-aware. I thought I was paying attention to the body. Everything I knew about anti-inflammatory, I put it in motion. And the injury was already done. I didn't know. And then I had it for 3 weeks. I kept thinking I was getting a chest cold. And I'm like, well, I don't get sick. I started doing teas and herbs and everything else. And finally, my chiropractor, I went back in for another session. And right after I competed at a CrossFit competition with the collapsed lung, didn't know it. And I told her, I was like, yeah, that cough is still there. And she's like, listen, here's a script for an x-ray. I need you to go in. I want to see what's going on inside. Well, sure enough, I went for the x-ray and they're like, we need to send you to the ER. You have a 35% collapsed lung.
Wow.
And it's life-threatening. And I'm like, oh, okay. So
yeah, and that's just an example too of kind of being connected to your body and knowing what's going on. And if you need emergency care, go.
Right. So there you go. The MDs were needed, right? And they end up actually having to do surgery on me. They actually had to cut a top layer of my lung off. I've never had surgery for stuff like that ever. But
I've never had a surgery either. But I better stop saying that. I don't want to tempt fate. So
well, I mean, right now all the incisions have healed. I have 4 points and they cut through my rib cage and but I've healed super fast because of a healthy lifestyle. And inflammation, it falls away because they wanted me to take drugs. I would not take oxy. I did agree to take something called tramadol, which is like super entry level, just to help me sleep
Yeah.
a couple of days because there was so much
Yeah.
pain. And then
Yeah,
they
and
put me on a,
and
yeah.
when it comes to pain meds, what I always tell people is take them for the short period of time that you need so that you can sleep and heal. Because I have a friend who's an integrated practitioner, and he's a kite surfer, and
Ah,
he went up in the air and the wind dropped and he just broke the
oof.
heck out of his leg. And I was like,
He
dude, what
slammed
do
down
they
pretty
have
hard.
you on? Yeah, he fell really hard. And he took them for a short time and weaned himself off, and then he hit the anti-inflammatories
Yeah.
hard after that. And you have the pain for 3 or 4 days and then it's gone. And that's a great time to harness the power of pharmaceuticals. I'm totally not anti-pharmaceutical, but there's a time and place for them for
Well,
sure.
my biggest concern was the impact to my gut biology because I'm such the health nut. I'm doing all these things like you and I are talking about today to
Yeah.
stay healthy, right? Because my brain health does matter to me and I want my gut health to stay. And I'm like, I was worried about the pharmaceutical impact
Yeah, we can
on that.
talk about that. So, unfortunately, a lot of drugs and even things that are over the counter that people think are harmless,
Hmm.
like ibuprofen and all these, acetaminophen and all these
Especially
painkillers,
acetaminophen. Yeah, right.
it's just really bad for your gut bacteria. So, when I just have, if when I get a headache once in a blue moon that I cannot bear, I will break down and take a painkiller. But
Same here.
otherwise,
But it's got to be like a couple times a
yeah,
year, if
yeah.
that.
So the deal is this: if you're on antibiotics or you've been taking those, you want to make sure you're reseeding the gut properly. And this is what you have to keep in mind: most probiotics that you get at the drugstore aren't any good. Some
Thank
of them are
you.
dead.
Grocery store stuff too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you want to look for things that are spores. They're called spores, and there's a lot of different brands out there. I'm sure you have your favorites. Megaspore is one of mine.
Well, I don't take a ton of them, right? I mean, I'm not like a regular user.
No, you take them after
Right.
for 2 weeks after you've taken antibiotics or
So do you
any kind of
support things like because I'm researching it now because I've never actually had done a full blown gut panel and I was looking at was it ubiome or
Yeah,
different? Yeah.
yeah.
So like, do you recommend one? Is there,
I actually recommend going through a practitioner though, because I don't know how ubiome stacks up to the GI map.
okay,
They're
back to
probably
GI map.
different
Okay.
because like ubiome and 23andMe, totally different than like the 23andMe. I did the epigenetics. It's a 75-page report. It tells me if I'm at risk for Alzheimer's. It tells me if I can process coconut oil. It tells
Oh
me
yeah.
how
Wait,
I sleep and everything. But the 23andMe test isn't going to tell you a lot of that stuff. So it just depends on how deep you want to go. The tests in terms of price vary, maybe $50. I rather go with the ones that the practitioners recommend. So I don't know about the ubiome because
yeah.
I haven't had as much experience with it. I did do the initial one, and the ubiome I did only tells you which flora is in your gut. It doesn't tell you if there's parasites,
It's funny you
but
brought up
the GI map
23andMe.
does. Yeah.
So that test you're referring to was what 23andMe told you, right?
Well,
Or
I seem to remember also doing ubiome, but that just tells you what kind of flora are in your
yeah.
gut, the good ones, and the GI map will tell you if you have a parasite. If I had overgrowth of Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, and Campylobacter, which is from chicken, it's kind of like
Yeah.
Salmonella.
Yeah.
So I am not sure, but see, ubiome may have different levels of those tests, but I always recommend just checking in with someone who's a functional medicine practitioner.
I love that because
And
we
the
aired.
testing wasn't expensive. The whole thing was $800 to do everything. So,
Well, that's not bad because I did the 23andMe, God, a year ago. And a doctor I've had on the show multiple times. Have you heard of Dr. Anthony J? He's a geneticist.
no.
Oh, guy's awesome. So he's doing research right now with the Mayo Clinic.
Okay.
But this guy, it's funny because earlier when I started chatting, you asked if I was a hunter because I was a former firefighter and all that. But the guy's, you watch him on Instagram and he's out there with camo and he goes and hunts wild game for his family. Like he's that pure.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
does
The
as a
original grass fed.
yeah, right. Like okay,
That's
that's
awesome.
legit. It's not been
Yeah.
tainted by factory farming.
And that's the
And
most humane too.
but one of his services is he's the author of oh God, it's not epigenetics, but he's a geek about epigenetics. I'm just blanking on it right now. It'll pop back in. But one of his services is he's like, oh Scott, he's like, let's do a live. We did a Facebook live podcast where we were actually live everything, and I had already sent him my raw data file. So here's a hack I've mentioned on other shows: people can export your raw data out of the 23andMe. So even if you, and here's your bigger hack, you don't have to pay for the health data component like I did. That was $50 more, because when they do the swab, They do everything, and everything is sitting in the raw data file. Then when you pay for the health data, then they unlock those data results and show them to you.
Ah,
So he's like,
okay.
Scott, you could have
Okay.
just bought the cheap, like genetic background version,
Oh,
which
that's
is like
such a great thing to
$40.
tell people. I didn't
Right.
know that. Okay,
And
because
then,
that's how my report was. Because I forget his last name, but Mansour is like a leading guy in epigenetics, and I did it with him. And the report came, and I was like, oh, I was blown away because it was so thorough.
well, I loved it because he does obviously he doesn't do what you're talking about, the full GI panel, but he takes the raw data file and then does a supplemental and chemicals analysis based on your DNA. And he prefers to also have a blood panel with that if you have blood
Yeah,
results.
yeah,
And
for
then he
sure.
puts together we did a whole review of my health based on that data and his analysis and showing me key supplements that genetically might work best for me. Like now, I never took glutathione before, and now I
Yeah.
take a glutathione,
Yeah,
and it's
the
been
other
great.
thing, yeah, and the other thing you might discover, which I discovered through doing all this testing, is that I have a mutation. I'm a mutant. And the mutation is that I have trouble manufacturing, or my vitamin D hormone levels are just, they don't function properly.
Okay.
So I can eat foods with vitamin D, I can go in the sun, I can take a supplement out the wazoo, but I have trouble manufacturing that. So I have to be very careful to make sure that I'm doing all those things in tandem and I'm getting into the sun. And,
Wow.
I'm in Hoboken and it's a very dark, cold winter, and I traditionally get
It
blue in
is.
the winter. And every time I'd go to my regular doctor, she'd be like, why is your vitamin D so low? I'd be, I don't know. Like, because I'd get the sun in the summer and it's supposed to store in your body, because it's a fat soluble vitamin.
Hmm.
But man, it's just because I have this mutation and my whole family has it. So I have to be extra attentive with supplementation, being in the sun, to make sure that hormone triggers.
No, it makes perfect sense. And real quick, just to close out Anthony J. So his book, which is popular for females especially too, but also males, is called Estrogeneration. So
Oh,
he's
interesting.
obsessed about removing plastics and obviously, again, I know you're going to reinforce this, right? Gut biology, hello. Microwaving things in plastic, so bad.
Yeah, and I actually have a hard time based on my genetics processing estrogens that come from plastic.
Mm.
So that's something you have to be really careful. So we changed to all glass containers here because when I saw that in my genetic makeup, and these plastics are just bad for you anyway, but that also includes putting stuff in plastic bags,
Just storing it,
saran wrap.
right? Yeah.
Yes, especially if things are hot. So I always tell people, store it in the pot, get a couple of those little Le Creuset, get some glass containers, make sure everything is BPA free or just plastic free in general.
Well, that's something he
And
taught me about was the leaching factor, right? Like, like, well, I'm not storing stuff for like weeks or weeks on end. He's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, plastic is plastic is plastic. I don't care if it's BPA, blah, blah, blah. He's like, it's still plastic. And he's like, especially if you heat it or radiate it, like a lot of people do with microwaves. You can
yeah, very
safely,
bad.
if you're a microwaver, fine, but you can safely microwave in glass.
Or in a
So
mug, a
yeah,
ceramic mug.
I
Yeah,
love
I tell
ceramics.
people that all the time. But we have such a high toxic load from the mercury and other things that are in our water, in our air, in our earth. So you want to just try to be balanced about this stuff without driving yourself bonkers. And I also tell ladies to detox their makeup.
Mm.
And I do a lot of stuff with essential oils, where instead of using a very toxic makeup remover, I'll use a little coconut oil and put a little lavender in it. Oh,
I got some rollers right here. A
yeah.
fellow yogi friend of mine that every Friday now we actually do yoga at my client's office,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
awesome.
her sister, and she's like, "Oh, I have some rollers for you." I'm like, "What's a roller?" Because I did yoga when I used to live in Colorado. I know yoga, and she's like, now she's a geek about the oils, and she's like, "Oh, rollers." I'm like, "You mean like a mobility thing?" And she's like, "No, as in you just roll the oils right onto your skin." And
Yeah, and they're full of antibacterial compounds, so they
mm,
can, whisk away if you swim in a public pool and you're worried about getting fungus on your skin. And, that's what essential oils are for. You can use them for all of that kind of stuff, to calm, to soothe, for your makeup practices, do-it-yourself makeup. I have a do-it-yourself deodorant that even survives through kickboxing for me. So,
really, that's impressive. Because
yes,
I studied martial arts as a kid, and I used
yes.
to sweat my butt off. So
Yeah. So, there's just so many wonderful things. And I always tell people, just change one thing at a time. don't drive yourself crazy, and little by little. And, I always tell people, research this stuff. It's there.
That's a great tip that you just tossed in there quick, because we are coming towards the end of your show. I'm going to pause on that. Do one thing at a time. People do so many massive changes and shifts in one time because they think they're going to rebuild their life. But then you don't actually know what's working and what's not. And then you get overwhelmed by that. And then you give up on everything. And it's like, no. Like, you have to treat yourself like a science experiment almost, right? Like, monitor these shifts and changes.
Yeah. And once you start doing your cleansing, and this is true of when you're cleansing and moving things in the home. Now, if it comes to doing things like I talked about in my book, where you're just sprinkling a little adaptogenic herb like turmeric or reishi mushroom in your smoothie and you're meditating, hey, go for it. But, the idea is, when it's a big thing like you're feng shuiing your house, or you're getting rid of toxic practices in your makeup and all that kind of stuff, one thing at a time, wait a week, see how you feel. You might see a huge difference. And that's where oh, maybe I have trouble with this eyeliner or this plastic, or maybe it's about getting rid of a toxic person in your life. We've all had that. And you do one change at a time, because the mind is not that elastic. It can be elastic, but when you make too many changes, sometimes it's very hard for your brain to adapt to all the changes, and it can cause you to feel very pressured. And this is also reason why you want to turn off social media at the end of the night, not have too much TV or too much noise, just to kind of
read a book.
Because read a book, and just, I was doing that thing, the life-changing magic of tidying up, where you totally revamp your whole house.
Or like I just did in my home studio office,
right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think skydivers like me and you can handle it. But I think people who have kids, I wouldn't recommend doing that. You want to do that in small steps. Even in the book, she's like, do the entire house over the whole weekend. I'm like, I don't know about that.
First of all, this is my fiance's house first. We decided to have me move in here, and me flipping this room freaked her out a little bit, because she's just like, no, it's always been laid out that way. She's like, I've allowed you to add your stuff in. And I'm like, just trust me. I'll handle it. Don't worry about it. It'll be better when I'm done. Just because some people, they struggle with change. So.
Yeah. And that's also how you keep those healthy habits permanently, is you make the small change, you wait a couple weeks, and then maybe you're going to explore the world of plant-based eating, or go into adaptogenic herbs, or you start to think, maybe I want to cut grains out of my life. And it's one by one by one. And also cost-wise, it's a little bit gentler on the pocketbook,
Yes.
And all these things, you want to move essentially to all the great stuff that we talked about in this interview. You want to have this all tapped down eventually, but this might take you 6 months to a year to get this all done. And that's okay. But, you're moving towards being healthier, and you're in that mindset of taking steps each and every day to be better and to feel better.
Well, I've already got one thing I'm adding to my list. I love using slow cookers. And ladies and gentlemen, again, that's why we put this on YouTube too. But I was doing a lot of screen sharing during the show, and she's got a whole section for books and articles on body and soulalchemy.com. And one of our other books here is Healing Slow Cooker. And everybody's all about the, what's the new thing now? The pot.
Instant Pot. I use that for my bone broth. I love it too. And you can
that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
I need to fix, because everybody's like, oh no, it's so much faster with the Instant Pot, because I make my own bone broth too.
Yeah.
And because that was my hack, by the way, when I was in the hospital, is that I was worried about the hospital nutrition.
Oh yeah.
So I said, baby, I was like, I went back to the way it was when I was a kid. I found a local ranch here in Pennsylvania. So that way it's sustainable farming. It's sustainable animals. He only, births and raises what people put deposits on down a year plus in advance. So my cow that's in my freezer I know it was grass fed. It was only raised for that purpose.
And the animal's probably happier too. I feel like that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Energy goes in there as well, and that gets into
that is huge part of it is emotional energy, especially how is the animal being brought to its end?
Yeah,
because that stuff gets retained into the muscle tissue. But I love slow cooking, and everybody's like, "Oh man, once you get a Instapot, your bone broth days are going to be amped up." But I had my fiance bringing me bone broth and slow cooker meat every single day, and veggies, because no offense in the hospital system, the food wasn't that good. So,
well, with the Instant Pot, if you want to translate any of the slow cooker recipes, usually on the pressure cooker setting, it's 20 to 30 minutes per 5 to 6 hours.
Ah, okay.
But you have to decrease the liquid if you're going to pressure cook by about a cup to 2 cups, depending on the recipe. Otherwise, it
Okay.
comes out watery.
So your book can cross over then. Okay.
Yes, it can. But
Does this
that's
mean you're
the
going to add another book to your list, by the way, in the next year or so? You're going to add a Instapot if it keeps going crazy like this?
Yeah, I definitely want to do another book after the Alchemy. I try to do at least one book or something for myself every year, and I usually do 2 or 3 practitioner books a year.
Okay.
So yeah, I write a lot, but definitely I'm going to think about, yeah, but who knows, there'll be something else out, some really cool tech tool out next year that we'll be crooning over for sure.
Oh, and real quick, because I want to respect your time. Do you have a minute or two as we bring the show to a close? I don't want to
Yes,
step on another show. Because sometimes, you guys are doing back-to-back podcasts like I do. I don't know. My next one's not for an hour. But
yeah, no worries.
Another thing I loved real quick, because I'm a marketing guy, and I'm sure your husband had something to do with this. Really? 50 Shades of Kale? Really?
Oh,
Okay.
I actually wrote that with an integrated psychiatrist who believes in food can heal depression.
I love it because obviously 50 Shades are great keywords. So
the psychiatrist actually thought of that, but no surprise, psychiatrists are pretty twisted.
yeah.
Yeah, but that was
this is a whole cookbook on utilizing kale in different ways?
Yes, yes. And we actually shot that at his family farm. So he grew up on a farm in Indiana, and I did the food styling, and he did the pictures he tied up all this kitchen equipment, and you can't see them here, but they look like little kitchen bondage tools. And he did that, and I did all the food styling for the book. And we did really well for this book. But this was, a book that is tongue in cheek, but we talk a ton about brain health in it. We talk about glucosinolates, which are the really important sulfur compounds that detoxify the entire body, and why kale, it's not a fad, man. It's like one of the best frickin' foods for you. But we have, there's vegetarian recipes, there's meat stuff in there. We talk about how to do meat healthier, how to do eggs better. And that book is a nice way to make it fun, but also sneak in a lot of what I talk about with, functional medicine and integrated medicine practices.
I think these are just great. I mean, the fact you're writing that many books is at a whole different level. I'm just trying to finish my first one. I mean, it's written. I just have to finish editing it. So I'm probably
that's the hard part. Yeah.
We're getting married in a few weeks.
Congratulations.
So thank you. Yeah, but I might take it with me as a side project if I have time between all the skiing we're going to be doing, because we're not having a normal wedding. So we're skydivers. We're doing heli skiing.
Oh my gosh!
Banff, Canada. So.
Oh my gosh! My suggestion to you is just hire an editor and just have them do it. You can live your life in peace.
I've actually had editors on the show. Well, the problem is this. Real quick, my hack was I voice transcribed the whole book during my travels because I can't sit down and write. I shouldn't say can't. I just don't want to. Yeah. And I'm a podcaster, so I was like, wait a minute. Why don't I just get a voice transcription app when I'm in the car or in an airport? I'll just talk. So now it's just going back and just building the structure, because I can't hand it off to an editor as is, because I should at least give them the flow and the paragraphs that I feel, and then they can improve upon it. But I'm willing to take feedback. If you're saying editor's a way to go, then I might have to give in.
Consider it. There's a lot of freelance editors out there that would love that job. So yeah.
Well, actually, I have one friend. She's an entrepreneur who helps entrepreneurs living with health problems. I'm just blank. I think her business is called Sick Biz, and that'd be interesting. Maybe I'll have to get you on that show too.
Oh, I would
because
love
she's
that.
always trying to help inspire, because she lives with a condition as well, and she's always trying a lot of pain, and she's always trying to help other entrepreneur-minded people or people who are living with severe health issues, inspire them and say, listen, even if you are stuck in your home, you can still build a business or build something. And she's written and co-authored and ghost written and edited and all that stuff. So
and you still have to follow what you're meant to do in this life, even though we all have challenges. I mean, some of us come from backgrounds of extreme poverty or abuse or illness, or but you got to do what the soul and heart wants. And that's amazing. So I can't wait for your book. We have to talk about that. I want to hear more about it.
It's a story of my transition of becoming a hotshot, and obviously afterwards, but obviously just the life lessons learned that I want to inspire people, because a lot of people don't know what a hotshot is. So it's, and a guy who was born in Jersey that went west to go do that, people they never had an East Coast person on the firefighting crew.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Hotshots don't exist. There's only one hotshot crew on the East Coast, and that's in Virginia. Hotshots are the elite of wildland firefighters, and they're in all the dry, hotter climates. So that
makes sense for California. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's crazy. So anyway, But every time I bring a new co-host on, I always try and think who I can get them connected with and get some.
Oh my gosh, that's so lovely.
So I think I want to connect you, if you're game, with Hillary.
Yes, I would love
of
to.
Sickbiz. So because her podcast is newer, but I love what she's doing.
No, absolutely. Connect us.
Yeah.
I love to talk about what I do, and any way I can be of service. I mean, this is why I became a healer, to help people. And a lot of, if people don't know what you do, or they don't hear, or they don't know about you, how are you going to help? So this is why modern tech is so important. Podcasting, television, Facebook, all these things are, important.
Sharing is definitely caring. That's what I like to say. I use that all the time. I use that to justify my lives from the hospital bed. Hey guys, it's here to share. So, all right, we've had some fun today. I have my action item. I want to get you shared with Hillary of Sickbiz, because I think you'll have a lot of fun. And I think your reach and your impact will be very, very powerful for those up and coming entrepreneurs who are living with certain major conditions. So
yeah, and I understand where they are, because a lot of the practitioners I work with have healed themselves from chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great connection, and I can definitely speak to how do you deal with chronic illness and be an entrepreneur.
Well, I love it. So listen, as we close the show out, you get actually some of the final words. So is there a way to kind of actually, yes, you're doing so much with Alchemy. Is there an all-encompassing message above and around everything you've done, 24 books, 2 different sites, coaching? I mean, what is your big picture? What do you want to leave behind for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want people to be able to heal themselves. That people that are suffering to understand that you have to heal holistically to really heal properly. So that's why mind-body medicine is such a huge platform for me, and why I support functional and integrated medicine. And I work with, these amazing healers and doctors. And really, that's what I want to teach people, because I didn't really heal from my illnesses until I healed them in the body and the emotions and in the mindset. And when you do that, your energy, everything goes up, so that you can follow what your life's purpose is, or just, have a happy family life. Just enjoy your life. I mean, that is the message. And, once people, and this is why there's such a trend in holistic health now, is people are starting to understand this. This is what lifestyle medicine is. It is functional medicine. It is holistic health. But you just have to make sure you're doing it the correct way, that you're not giving weight to one more than one or the other, because in traditional medicine, they think it's all about the body. But now through placebo and everything else we've learned through science as well, and through spiritual practices, mindset, these special plant foods, I call them plant healers that heal people. It's got to be done in tandem. You got to give each part an equal player in the
and stop using those pharmaceutical
health.
Band-Aids.
Yeah, and maybe it's about eventually weaning off pharmaceuticals that you need for right now, which is okay. But when you go deeper, that's how you heal the root cause, is through these 3. And that's where you see all these symbols with the triangle and all these spiritual things. The circle is the person or the body, and the triangle is the body, the emotions, or the soul, and the mind or the spirit. And this was the old alchemical formula. You see all this stuff. Everyone's talking about alchemy, and it seems magical, because this incredible amount of energy is unlocked when you heal in these 3 areas. But it's not magical. It's the way humans are made. And once we understand that and we start healing on that level, that's where we get our vitality back. And that is magical. So.
Oh, I love it. And actually, real quick, I zoomed in on your site, because obviously your circle and your triangle is a big part of your brand, because it's in your logo. So
yes.
And a little touch of veggies in there.
And alchemy is everywhere. I'll tell you that right now. Harry Potter is 100% based on alchemy. The woman who came up with that series, she was a hardcore alchemist. So you're seeing this everywhere. Newton was an alchemist. Einstein was an alchemist. They all studied this, and they knew the power of the mind and of the emotions over the body and over your health. So that's why, you take a look in every area, start slow and work your way up, and, start to unlock some of that healing.
I love it. Well, listen, hang tight. I want to give you a proper goodbye off the air. Ladies and gentlemen, we've definitely hit a lot on alchemy today. So if you have not used that buzzword enough in your life, hopefully we have passed that on today. So again, make sure you check her out at bodyandsoulalchemy.com, especially if you know some fellow professionals out there that want to get a little more knowledge and maybe start adding some new courses into their workload. And also make sure you check out the cookbook, obviously, superfoodalchemy.com. And again, all the stuff will be linked in the show notes like we always do on livethefuel.com, so don't worry about that. But again, we're here to fuel your health, your business, your lifestyle. She hit heavily on it today, ladies and gentlemen. Again, healthy lifestyle, balancing business, balancing the struggles of entrepreneurship. This is what we're all about. So thanks for tuning in. And remember, you too can live the fuel. We'll talk to you guys again soon.